check the roll?
I have, sir, and we have a quorum. In fact, we have perfect attendance except for the vacancy we filled up.
Thank you. Well, we will call the meeting to order. I believe the first agenda item is Dick Ferguson will give us a review of our financials. So I guess that would be for
Yes, sir. We're going to go through this quickly. Total checking and savings, $3,764,546.10. Total current assets, $3,831,554.63. Total fixed assets, $4,979,835.40. Total assets, $8,866,245.03. Reserve for taxes and collected, $60,225.33. Accrued expenses, that's the balance of the auditor's fee. Total equity, $8,802,449.70. Total liabilities and equity, $8,866,245.03. We're going to, if you will notice deposits, if you have any questions concerning those deposits, they're all pretty explanatory. The tobacco settlement came in, the ETMC payment of $25,289.63, which is the CPI, the quarterly payment, and the women's pension. Interest on checking, interest on checking. On the checks, you're going to see a lot of checks. They are, on the first page, it's just utilities, appraisal district, our pro rata share. We're also bonded some repairs to the EMS building, legal fees to community hospital, election systems as part of the election, my fee of $800. Brandon Hurlbert, physician recruitment, Irma Chavez, housekeeper, election systems, CNC heating, that was on EMS systems. That was on the EMS building. Election systems, another part of the election expense. And then Texas Department of State Health Services, that relates to the new hospital. So some of those expenses that we're now paying out of the district's operating account will need to be somehow accounted for over on the hospital's books whenever that day comes. So that's what that is. Profit and loss for the month of April, $5,689.22. Income, $46,280.55. Biggest item is legal professional, $31,556.32. So net income year to date, $89,265.31. Any questions?
I have a question concerning the tobacco
Yes, sir.
payment. What is that directed toward?
You mean directed? Well, is it earmarked or is it? No, sir. General fund. It is toward the tail end of the tobacco settlement. It's been going on for several years. It was at $1,60,000, and we do not know how much we'll get each year, but it is paper. Profit and loss compared to the budget. Net income for the year-to-date, $89,265.31. We budgeted $274,549.90. If you look down the over and unders, you'll see that the largest over expenditure was in legal professional, $104,648, and a radiologist of $75,000. Any questions concerning profit and loss compared to the budget? After this month, there won't be any. Nothing that makes a lot of sense with it. I think the budget's going to have to be amended to reflect the operations of the hospital. This budget is set beginning of the fiscal year based on just the operations of the district. Any questions? The investments. The money market account, $1,073,324.98, operating $129,739.89, a CD of $1,044,513.96, maturing in April of 16, a CD of $1,512,000, maturing 6/15. We are not going to renew that CD, and we're going to roll it over into the money market account. Accrued interest today, $3,491.14. On the next page, That's right.
Who holds the accounts? Who has those CDs?
They're all at First Community Bank, that's a depository bank. There was a question asked in the prior period about forfeiture. I made a note here on this. If you do not, if you cash out a CD prior to its maturity, and it has a term of 12 months or less, the forfeiture is 3 months interest. If the term is greater than 12 months, forfeiture is 6 months interest. All right, the deposits at the bank, $3,784,250,000 FDIC coverage. The bank has pledged securities of $4,142,683. They are overpledged $608,139.39, and those securities pledged are Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae, or Freddie Mac. They have a market value $4,142,683. Any questions concerning the financials?
I'm sorry, could you explain?
Yes,
The FDIC is 250.
Yes, sir. Our total deposits are $3,784,000.
Right.
And we have a governmental entity, those deposits have to be covered in another way. So they have pledged marketable securities of their choosing to our account.
Really?
So in the case of default of the bank, these securities would then become, I'm not sure exactly how that works, because Blackwood hotels, but they are securing our deposits.
Really?
So we have no exposure to that.
So that's certainly as collateral.
Yes, yes. And that's what a depository contract does.
Any other questions? Chairman, entertain a motion to approve.
I move we approve the financial statements.
Motion has been made, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Motion has been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Sounds unanimous, ayes have it. Bill, I guess the next item is the CHC update.
Yes, sir. We continue to press forward, and we're very near the finish, when I say finish line, transition line. The official transfer, as I believe everybody knows, takes place at midnight, May 31st, this coming Sunday. So if you want to join, several of us will be up here at midnight on Sunday, May 31st. It's, as you might expect, or as you know, it's a wild time. The IT people are all over the place doing things, but we're feeling pretty good that we're going to get there. It's going to be rocky. We've shared that with the employees. We've got most of the positions filled, jobs offers out, we've accepted. A couple of positions that we filled last week that I believe everybody on the board is aware of. Dr. Conadala signed his employment agreement and is going to remain in the community. I want to thank the community, the board, the medical staff, and probably anybody else, because a lot of people have encouraged him to stay, and he feels that this is the best place for him. In addition, Dr. Conadala, Lori Neubauer, the nurse practitioner, is planning to stay as well. So we have those providers remaining. It obviously gives momentum to the rural health clinic. So while staffing will be lowered or decreased because of a decrease in providers, we've actually had a fortuitous set of circumstances in that I believe there's only one person that applied that we don't have a position for. So it's not like we had, so many folks apply to stay in the rural health clinic, and we just didn't have enough positions. Some of them are leaving the area, some work in other hospitals, and that's where they want to go. But we're staffed up and ready to go. I want to acknowledge Barbara Watson. Now, Barbara is not going to be gone immediately, but as you know, CHC's been working with the district under a consulting transition arrangement, and we'll be going into a management agreement after the first. Barbara will be phasing out as she completes, I hope she completes, all the stuff that she's been working on. She's done an awesome job in the 90 days. In addition to everything she's done clinically, she's picked up a couple new careers. She's become a quote-unquote certified human resource person along with Bob Florida. So it's just, we couldn't be where we are without her efforts. But she'll still be around for a while helping us with the startup. Now, as we start up, we have a new player, Lucy Norris, who will be stepping in as the interim CNO. Lucy comes with highly credentialed. You'll get to know her pretty quickly. She's been here spending some time with Barbara and getting as much up to speed as you can with all that's going on. But very excited and pleased that she's going to be part of the team. Last week, Lucy and Barbara and Amy Boykin, and I'm leaving somebody out, and myself, we went to Tyler, the state health services department, and did the required pre-survey conference. That basically was the last step toward getting our license. I checked with the attorney today. They filed the paperwork, and we should get official notice that there's no problem, there's no editing or anything, but we should get the official document no later than Monday. But they will be issuing a license, so we'll be legal for that. I've asked Amy and Barbara to share with you, I know they handed out a little one-page deal. One of the next big steps that we have is to give her a survey, a facility survey, a certification survey that CMS, Medicare, Medicaid requires so we can get paid. And we've got about 3 options, and I've asked if Amy and Barbara would just share with you what you have in front of you and give you their thoughts. I'll also mention that I probably was not specific enough with the agenda. This is an item that we would like the board's thoughts on as to which options or how the options appeal to you or don't appeal. And I was talking with Dick earlier. I don't know if I should have been more specific to say that there would be a need for action. This is the sort of thing that there does need to be some action going forward. But let me first ask Barbara.
Amy's going to start.
I'll just be talking from the head out here, but the first thing is to kind of explain to you the difference between having CMS certifications, a certification to participate in the Medicare and Medicaid program versus being accredited. The one thing that a hospital has to be is certified to participate in the Medicare and Medicaid program. That can be done one of 2 ways. Either the state survey agency, which for Texas is the Department of State Health Services, will come in to do a survey to make sure that the hospital is in compliance with all of the conditions of participation for Medicare. Those are standards that the hospital must achieve and maintain in order to participate. That particular survey process, as all of these, are basically 3 years. So they come in and do your initial certification survey when you first open. You cannot bill for Medicare and Medicaid patients until such time that that survey happens. You have to have at least 5 inpatients to be eligible for survey, and at the time they come in, which is unannounced to the hospital, you have to at least have 1 inpatient in-house. So in other words, you have to have open medical records that are actively working for them to take a look at. So there are some parameters and some conditions that the hospital has to be in order to be eligible for survey. Once that happens, if the hospital has certain deficiencies that still need to be corrected, which very commonly, especially a new hospital will, then we put a corrective action plan together, and that goes back to the department, they approve the action plan, and then they wrap that up in paperwork to go to the CMS regional office, which is in Dallas, with a recommendation for certification. And then that's processed, and the hospital gets what's called the CMS certification number, CCN, also known as the Medicare provider number. Once you have that number, now the hospital can bill, and not only can you bill for services going forward, but you can bill retroactively back to the date of survey for those patients that you have taken care of at that point in time. So that's a must-have for every hospital. No charge. It's a government entity coming in, so there's no survey fee for that. There are many small hospitals, especially critical access hospitals throughout the country, that remain CMS certified. That's all that they have. The accrediting organizations, the Joint Commission would be one, and the CIHQ, the Center for Improvement of Healthcare Quality, is another one. They have gone through a process with CMS whereby their survey process is now what they call a deeming authority. So if you pass the accreditation survey, you are deemed to be in compliance with the conditions of participation. Many of us look at the accrediting organizations as that next step up, so the gold standard, if you will. Many hospitals feel like they need or want to be accredited in addition to participating in the CMS program. And with either of these accrediting organizations, you can be both. They've both been approved by CMS to do that. The difference is there are survey fees attached to the accrediting organizations, and they vary from organization to organization. So what we put together here, the table that you see, is over a 3-year survey cycle. They're all 3-year survey cycles, but you can see the cost related to being Joint Commission accredited versus CIHQ. And I know historically that this hospital through ETMC has been accredited by the Joint Commission. My understanding is they dropped Joint Commission accreditation in 2009.
Once it gets this board, we offer to pay, we beg them to keep it, so.
Right.
we're very strong.
Sure. Yeah. So as you look across, the big difference between CIHQ and the Joint Commission, CIHQ is a newer accrediting organization. They were approved in August of 2013 to be a deeming authority for CMS. Of course, Joint Commission, really Joint Commission has been around almost as long as the Medicare program has been around. So they go way back, along with another organization for the American Osteopathic Association. So there were 2 that really started from the beginning. Joint Commission, of course, is the larger of the accrediting organizations. I don't know exactly how many hospitals that they have, but they are, without a doubt, the primary accreditor for hospitals nationwide. CIHQ, yes ma'am.
What is the acronym? What does it stand for?
CIHQ,
Yeah.
Center for Improvement of Healthcare Quality. CIHQ really specializes in small to medium-sized hospitals. Joint Commission does, all sizes, all comers. They do have, they are more expensive. The biggest difference is that CIHQ will charge you a flat fee each year for the 3-year survey cycle. So it's about $5,500 a year. When they come in on that 3rd year to do the survey cycle, or I'm sorry, to do the accreditation survey, there are no more survey fees. That flat fee, $5,500 per year, covers everything that they do for those 3 years. Joint Commission charges also an annual fee, somewhat less, about $2,300 per year, but then when they come in to do their survey, you have additional survey fees according to the number of surveyors they send and the number of days that they are here. Okay? If, in fact, you were to have what's called a commission level finding. So that's a more significant finding, so you're out of compliance with at least one of the conditions of participation. What that, you still do a corrective action plan, but that requires a follow-up survey for them to come back and make sure that your corrective action plan has fixed the problem. Joint Commission charges additional survey fees for that process. CIHQ does not. Okay? The other sort of additional cost, if you're a Joint Commission accredited hospital, remember the last time I was here, we talked about those mandatory measures that are now reported publicly up to the CMS. And the hospital, in order to participate in Medicare, has to report those measures to CMS. Joint Commission also requires their accredited hospitals to report many of the same measures to them. And so the vendor that we will choose to do the reporting for us will report to CMS. If they also have to report to the Joint Commission, there's usually an additional fee that the vendor charges for doing dual reporting. So that you see there under additional fee for ORIX reporting. ORIX is the name of the program that Joint Commission uses for their quality measures. That's $6,000. It's about $2,000 a year over 3 years for the additional reporting. So there at the bottom, again, over 3 years, you can see the difference between what the Joint Commission fees would be versus CIHQ. Again, remembering if you remain CMS certified, they also will come in every 3 years, no fee attached to that. The other difference with CIHQ is they will do an accreditation survey every 3 years, but in the intervening 2 years after that, they will come back just to do a touch point with the hospital, probably send one surveyor in for a day, just to see how the hospital is doing, to see if there are any revisions to their standards, how they're progressing toward that. There's no additional fee for that. So you get a touch point, if you will, every year during the 3 years. For CMS and Joint Commission, not as much. Joint Commission has a different process that's computer-based in terms of the touch point they do with the hospital that usually are not on site. Does that help?
Do you have a recommendation? I'm not familiar with CIHQ, but I am with Joint Commission and
Right.
other, several of us are that way.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're sort of leaning.
Well, CIHQ, again, because they lean towards small hospitals, their survey process is very basic. It follows the conditions of participation. The Joint Commission oftentimes has standards that are above and beyond what CMS requires. The difference today for an initial certification, to use an accrediting organization versus the state CMS itself, is timing. Remember, you can't bill until the certification survey is done. It's a balance because we need the hospital to be ready for survey so that you get it done the first time out, right? But we want them to come as quickly as they can. Once we notify them that we are ready for survey, we've had our 5 patients in, we've got all policies and procedures and infrastructure in, we want them to come as quickly as possible. We have no control over when the state will put it on their agenda to get here. In our pre-survey conference, they kind of indicated to us that typically, once we notify them that we're ready, you can look for 45 to 60 days before they would come in. One thing, at least for me, that's changed over the last few years with the state is that their life safety engineers, so the guy that would come in to look at the physical plant, the environment of care, make sure that fire safety and life safety and all those things are in place, those are engineers out of Austin, out of architecture review group in Austin. They now have to come in first, do the life safety survey, make sure that things are good to go there before the folks in Tyler would come in to do the remainder of the survey. She indicated to us that the AR group, the engineers, are pretty far behind in what they're trying to accomplish now. The other thing just to know is throughout, some of the government changes that have happened over the last several years, especially when sequestration came in, all of the government agencies looked at their priority list, and right now, doing a routine initial certification survey for a hospital is probably less of a priority for the state than if they had complaint investigations or quality concerns or safety concerns for other hospitals, which is a part of what they do. Those things are going to come first. With the accrediting organization, once you submit your application and make the decision to go with that group, you become their customer. And we oftentimes can lean on them a bit to expedite getting them in to do that initial survey. So, you know, yes, I would probably lean on the side of accrediting organization, probably CIHQ. CIHQ does all of the accrediting surveys for the long-term acute care division for CAC. We have a good relationship with those folks. I will tell you personally, my experience over 20 years has been primarily in the Joint Commission arena. That's, you know.
And that's always, we thought gold standard, that's what we always wanted as a board, we thought strongly for that. So now, we don't know our standards, but yet,
So you have to consider two things. How quickly can we get them in? What's going to be the upfront cost for you to do the initial survey? And then what it would cost again over the 3 years? You know, again, a lot for you to balance and consider, but we wanted you to know what the options are. And we wanted to explain, again, the difference between having to be certified by CMS, not having to be accredited unless you want to take that one step. One option might be initial certification through CMS to defer any upfront costs. And at some point in time, if you want to be accredited by one of the organizations, we can do that at any point in time.
Can you change from one of the accredited organizations to the other at any time?
You can.
So we could?
You can. Yeah, the only time that I advise against that is if you happen to be in your survey year, you want to go ahead and get that survey done and then move to the other.
Excuse me, somewhere in there I heard that we had to be certified to get Medicare and Medicaid.
Yes.
Did I hear that?
so we need to be quick, we don't want to make a mistake.
And we have some work to do to get survey ready.
I
We
understand
did.
that. I'm trying to, I need a little help.
That cash flow projection we talked about several months ago?
Yes.
Yeah, this is part of that cash flow
That's
projection.
exactly right there. Well,
Yeah.
make sure I understand.
And remember that once you have your certification number, your Medicare provider number, you can bill retroactively back, right? So you
Well, yeah,
will
I'm not worried about the billing back, I'm
Yeah.
worried about.
going forward.
The money on the front end.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
right.
So if we were to go with the CHI,
CIHD.
then we get that with our certification, we don't need to stay?
That's right.
They
Yeah,
do.
Yeah, I will tell you that at some point in time, state will come in, because not only are they they're an agent of the federal government when they come in to do your CMS certification, but remember, there are also hospital licensure rules and regulations in the state of Texas. So they will come in at some point in time, because they also look at the hospital licensure rules and regs, which pretty much follow the COPs, but there are a few differences. So at least in my experience, initially, you do the accrediting organization, get your certification number, get everything up and going, and at some point in time, the state will also pop in unannounced. All of these are unannounced to us.
But in the meantime, with this, even though we're waiting on the state,
Yes.
we're still able to do it.
That's right. Yes.
Speaking from the chief nursing officer perspective, I think that, I know that y'all said loud and clear that you really want to have that gold standard of the Joint Commission, and you want to have that level of care, because that's really important to you. And in my opinion, what CIHQ, we can do that with CIHQ. Like National Patient Safety Goals, you know, there's a kind of a Joint Commission item, but that doesn't mean that we can't follow the National Patient Safety Goals. So it's not that their stuff is copyrighted to a point that we can't utilize those standards. We can build those standards, as we talked about, into our policies and procedures and our practices, because we know that's the level. And it doesn't, in my opinion, and at least you can speak up, it's not that that's a higher standard, that's a more recognized standard. I don't know that it's necessarily a higher standard. It's a lot more busy work for moi, and probably you, but it's certainly, I think, the level of care and the quality that we want here can be achieved.
And there are going to be indirect costs, you know, especially for Joint Commission, again, because as Barbara said, sometimes they're over and above, they're more complicated. So it's going to take time and resources within the hospital on a go-forward basis in order to maintain compliance with all of the standards. Yes, sir.
You said that CIHQ is a governmental agency?
No, sorry. CMS, Department of State Health Services, those are the governmental agencies. CIHQ is a private accrediting organization, just like the Joint Commission.
You're just about like it all progress.
Yes, sir.
What's, in your experience, the working relationship between the Texas CMS office and CIHQ? What's the working relationship there?
Very different, very different. The other big difference between a survey by the state and a survey by an accrediting organization is that the state agencies will tell you, and they told us at the pre-survey conference, we are not there to be consultants for you. We are not there to tell you how to get things right. We're just there to survey, to inspect, and make sure you're doing them right. They also can be black or white. Oftentimes, when you've been doing this as long as I have, standards there can be some level of gray in there in terms of how the hospital is meeting the intent of the standard versus how the surveyor interprets the standard and sees it. So, but they're there to say, yes, you're doing it, no, you're not. They're not there to tell us how to do that. Joint Commission, CIHQ, the accrediting organizations, their survey processes and our relationship in between, much more of a collaborative, consultative, educational process. They still have to make sure we're doing things correctly, but they're going to work in partnership with us, and they're going to say, oh, by the way, we have another hospital, that's had this same struggle. Here's how they're correcting that.
I think he's asking about CHQ and the state. What is their relationship? Is that what you're
asking? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. CIHQ and the Joint Commission, all the accrediting organizations really have no relationship with the state of Texas Department of State Health Services. Their relationship is with CMS, and CMS brings them in, usually on an annual basis, to say, here are how the COPs have changed. Here are revisions to our standards. Therefore, we need your standards to now mirror those. Or here's some areas where we're seeing trends and patterns in either discrepancy between what the accrediting organization found and what CMS is looking for. So so the relationship is really at the CMS level with the accredited organizations. And I'll tell you just from personal experience, the Department of State Health Services comes in on a complaint investigation and says, complaint is non-substantiated, everything was taken care of, but oh, by the way, I found these two things that you're out of compliance with. And we'll say, well, we were just surveyed by the Joint Commission, and we worked through that, and it doesn't seem to be a problem. The state's going to say, we don't care what Joint Commission found. Here's what we're seeing, and here's our interpretation of the standard, and therefore we're going to cite that efficiency. So, does that help? Yes, sir.
You said it was, you can move from one to the other one.
Yes, sir.
HCHD. And so if you have a complaint like that, how difficult is it for you to move from one to the other? It depends on
Complaint's different. A complaint is different. A complaint is handled by the state, not their accrediting organization.
Well, they can be. They can be handled by the accrediting organizations now. That's something that really has changed over time. But typically, it's the state who comes in, especially if they have concern that there's a safety issue as the basis of a complaint. Yes, sir.
There are a number of physicians across the United States who are opting out of Medicare, Medicaid programs. Is it possible for a hospital to do that?
Not when you consider what your payer mix would be.
Our payer
No,
mix
wait a
is-
minute. Now, the doctor says you come in here as a Medicare or Medicaid patient. My bill is $500. Okay? You now owe me $500. You take the bill and go to Medicare or Medicaid and see what you can get. But right now, and I'll reduce it to cash. I mean, that's a very common practice in
Sure.
Michigan. Okay?
Right. The rules don't work the same for
Well,
hospital reimbursement.
I have not heard of a hospital doing that, but I am so upset with the federal lack of payment and what they told us over the past 40 years, that I am looking for any possible way. Because if the doctor charges you $500, but we'll settle for $250 in cash, and we don't have to have a billing office at this hospital to try to collect it. But we know we're not going to get from Medicare and Medicaid. We're going to get, $56.25 on a $500 bill. Why not go the cash route and truly reduce reduce the cost to the people of this county?
You know, that's from Bob can probably speak more about this, that's kind of a slippery slope. I know there is a model for that, in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Okay?
That's, here we are 7 years later, that is not a successful model.
And our population does not have cash. This,
But
Yeah, I know.
it's gonna take somebody perhaps bigger than us here at Crockett to
Sure.
make that difference.
Sure.
We don't part of our
What you're
charge
saying makes
is
sense.
the chair too, which, that's not Medicare, I understand that, Medicaid, but, you know, I don't see how we get around not being able to provide that.
So, I just read the bylaws today, and there's a 3-paragraph section in there talking about needy care and indigent care and negotiating that with the board. Well, that's not happening, and we don't anticipate that happening, but at the same time, you know, to be financially solvent and moving forward as an institution, I at least want to look at all possible options.
I don't disagree with that.
Okay, so anyway.
but of course, I think what we're looking at right now is to get that license, and we need to decide between we want to stay or we want to be a credit organization.
That's correct.
Are we needing to do that today, or is that something we can do? And here's an issue that the board, Bill and I have been discussing, not sure where it needs to come down. But as we move forward, we've hired them to be our managers. And it gets a little cloudy as to what do we need to bring to, or they need to bring to the board, and what do we need to tell them, okay, we hired you as managers. That's a management decision versus a board decision. And I don't expect us to resolve that tonight, but that is something that going forward, I think we're going to have to try to get us involved and figure out where we draw that line.
Well, I would just say that we hired them as professional people, and I think we need to pay much attention to their thoughts and opinions. I don't think we need to be a rubber stamp, but we need to.
No, and I don't think we need to micromanage either, so I don't know where that balance comes in. To me, you know, this is,
I was gonna say, not holding your feet to the fire, but, how soon do you think you have the hospital ready for
We've been asking ourselves that question. And I know what I've been talking to the staff about is there's several of us on the CHC team, including Lucy, that can kind of descend on the facility and kind of with a clean set of surveyor, eyes, make some changes and do some of the dress-up stuff within the background, doing the policies, procedures, plans, all those other kinds of paper that you guys have in place. We're throwing around 4 to 6 weeks.
I get the idea from the presentation that probably the CIHQ group would be the group that can respond the quickest.
And the cheapest.
If possible,
Other than
the state's cheap.
The state, we can't wait for the state.
Well, the state is, is kind of throwing the dice.
Yeah.
Now the survey team that we spoke with did emphasize to us that they are empathetic to the hospital and understand with the initial certification survey that they're not billing, and so they do, try to get here just as quickly as they can. Now, again, the Tyler group, which I'm going to call the program group that does most of the, they're kind of hamstrung for a while because they can't do anything until the guys in Austin get here to do life safety. They don't have any control over the architectural review group. Again, both agencies know and understand that we need to get to the hospital as quickly as we can. CIHQ, again, just like Joint Commission, we're customers of theirs, and so, oftentimes we can prevail on them to see what they can do to work us in because it's an initial survey. We just have to be ready. That's the thing with Barbara and I both. Once we notify them and we pull the trigger, we have to be ready because it could be 2 weeks or it might be another month before they get here. Hard to say. Even with CIHQ and the Joint Commission, we're not going to know when they come. It's an unannounced survey to us. The longer we sort of prolong the decision, though, their schedules are, their calendars are filling up with, with other surveys. So I don't know that I could predict, but I think 4 to 6 weeks. What we have talked about is by the end of perhaps next week, Lucy and I talked about having a drop this day, the hospital's gonna be survey ready. Everybody knows what the date is, and then holding accountable to that, CHC will have weekly phone calls to say, okay, where are we on the timeline? What still needs to be done, so that we've got an idea of when we're going to be ready. In the meantime, I'm not sure that we're gonna have any trouble getting the 5 inpatients that we need to care for, first, within the next 4 to 6 weeks. My guess is that won't be a problem to do. So, hopefully, if we pull the trigger at, let's just say, 6 weeks, hopefully within the month following, we'll get there. Yeah.
Since we've always wanted to be the gold standard, we can start out right now, we're kind of short on money, we're on time, so maybe we went with CIHQ, we could then, our goal would be maybe to move to the Joint Commission in a year or two.
Well, that would be up to you. I would say see how how you like CIHQ. The other big thing about CIHQ, different than the Joint Commission, once you're accredited by them, you have access to their website, which is, from my perspective, one of the very best that I've seen in terms of resources for a hospital, whether it be educational modules to pull down, policy templates, forms and tools, all those things you can get from the Joint Commission, you just pay for it. CIHQ, that all comes to you with your accreditation fee. So upfront, you're probably looking at a $5,500 annual fee. They invoice that on an annual basis, so probably $5,500 upfront cost for CIHQ.
I don't want to muddy the water. What group came in, as part of the transition agreement, we had a group come in
Yes,
and do a survey of the hospital.
that was CIHQ.
In our opinion, they did a focused survey.
Clarify that, because I think that's very important for the board to understand.
We were here in October. I was one of the folks that was lucky enough to come back in October, and we came with a building person as well, facilities manager there. And I think that this survey was not what we call a full book survey, looking at every standard across the board. They wouldn't have walked out of here had they done that. But I think it was a focused survey based off of our original findings back in October when we first came.
I think they did what they were asked to do, in this case by EPMC, so they did a focus survey based on the report that Mark was talking about, as opposed to coming in and doing what I would call a full COP mock survey to see where is the hospital in all of the seniors, not just the few that they look at.
Infection control, all those things.
Right.
Yeah. So that, you're very astute, because it is the same group. And there were some opportunities that I think they were not asked to look at those.
Well, it just scares me that you're saying it's going to be difficult for us to get up to the standard rate for a survey when we had the same people come in and look at us.
Well, part of that is because it's essentially a brand new hospital, so even though, let's say that they've come through and the building is in great shape, let's just assume the building is in great shape, and it can be ready for survey now, you still have policies and procedures and plans and all different kinds of things, infrastructure, and that's what they'll be looking at. Does the hospital have the infrastructure to provide high-quality patient safe care, right? So having to stand up a brand new hospital for all intents and purposes, that takes time to get that stuff in place. That's what we're talking about. Not only are we promulgating new policies and procedures, but the staff have to know what those policies and procedures are and have to be able to speak to the medical staff, has to know what the expectations are relative to the new bylaws and those kinds of things. Yes, ma'am.
CIHQ's been around for 2 years, right?
They've
They
been
were
around.
established in 2013.
Right, they've been around for quite a long time as a consulting company, preparing hospitals for survey and all of that. It's just been within the last 2 years that they were approved as an accrediting organization, much like Joint Commission. Well, Joint Commission has a consulting arm as well called Joint Commission Resources. CIHQ had a consulting arm that's been around for probably 20 years or so.
Okay, so you're pleased with their track record up to this point?
We have been, yes.
Okay. How does that change from, just basically Joint Commission, affect, if at all, physician recruitment? I mean, doctors want to know that? Who you're-
I think
dealing with.
it goes back to Mr. Drew's question earlier. A lot of hospitals are opting out of the Joint Commission because of the expense. I can't say if that's why ETMC did it or not. I have no idea. And so it is not unusual that some of the hospitals that you consider top-notch maybe don't even have Joint Commission anymore. Or maybe they just have to see specific, they have a piece of that. But you're seeing more of a mixture than you were, say, 20 years ago.
Yes.
If I understand the question, in physician recruitment, it's rare for them to, I mean, they'd like to know if you're accredited, but they don't weigh it as heavily as they do, you know, what services do you have, you know, what other practices are there, what kind of collegial atmosphere am I going to be practicing in? And I'm not saying that they don't care if it's Joint Commission or not Joint Commission, but that's rarely a deal breaker if it's a place they want to be and settling in practice.
And the quality outcomes.
And of course, in our case, it will be incumbent upon us if we go this direction to be sure if the guy says, well, are you accredited? Because a lot of people, when you say, are you accredited, they immediately think of Joint Commission. Well, now there's an alternative. And so it will be incumbent upon us to explain, well, yes, we're accredited, it's through CIHQ, and then when they look at you physically, you proceed to explain that story to them. I mean, I think that's all we really can do. It's a great question, but I don't know that I've ever run across a physician that said, I don't even want to talk to you if you're not Joint Commission accredited. Not that there aren't some out there, but you know, we've actually got some things, and we've talked a little bit about that, and in fact, we're going to talk about something tonight. We've got an atmosphere here that's a little more medical education oriented, and that's more attractive because doctors often look and they say, if you've got an internship or a residency program going, or you've got a grant program going, that means you're focused on quality. So that says more to them than, okay, you meet all of the Joint Commission standards. Does that make sense? And I'll defer to Dr. Ramsey, quite honestly.
We're interested in, I think we had a history around here of participating in education for not only nursing students, but also for medical students and residents. And we've done that for years. Go back when people that have come through a training program understand how that works. And they like the idea that we're teaching.
And I think it's going to be one of the driving forces for this facility, for this organization to grow and develop. Because yes, we may be a small rural community, but there's something more going on here than the typical small rural community hospital. It's not just a few docs that are practicing, and one day those docs go away. I mean, there's some regeneration that goes on. And if you all ever have an opportunity to visit with any of the students, and it's probably not a bad idea to bring them in here one time to meet with the board, and just listen to how energized they get.
Well, many of them, all kind of lament the passage of Marcus Wells